Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I'm Ethan Ward, 38, a financial consultant in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was at my desk finishing a quarterly rebalance when the noise in the hallway cut through the numbers on my screen. The front door opened hard, quick footsteps crossed the entry, and she appeared in the living room in a new white blazer I hadn't seen before. A tote bag with the Retreat logo hung off her shoulder. She didn't ask what I was working on. She looked past me, past the house we built, and said the line she must have practiced on the drive home. I won't be defined as a man's wife anymore. Then she turned and walked out. The door hit the frame. Outside, a car idled. Her friends shouted congratulations and told her this was her new start. Tires rolled over the gravel, and the noise faded. I stayed in my chair for a minute and let the house go quiet again. The spreadsheet waited on the second monitor. A client's allocation needed a small correction. I finished the entry, saved the file, and set my hands flat on the desk. There was nothing to chase. The sentence she delivered wasn't an invitation to talk. It was a declaration. The signs had been in plain view all spring. First it was the books, self-importance manuals lined up on the nightstand, bright covers facing outward. Then podcasts with titles about power and boundaries. She began using phrases I'd never heard from her before and applying them to ordinary parts of our life. Dinner plans became control. A budget calendar became restriction. Saturday mornings turned into workshops, coffee meetups, and planning sessions for the next chapter. The phone never left her hand. New lock screen, new passwords, and a habit of stepping into the bathroom for calls that used to happen in the kitchen. When I asked how the retreat was structured or who was leading it, the answer was vague, and then the subject changed. Her new circle expanded fast. A friend from her office who talked about breaking patterns. A neighbor who liked dramatic gestures and said every marriage needed a reset. A divorced acquaintance who appeared on our porch twice with flyers for an event. Group chats filled her evenings. I noticed how messages from the women arrived in bursts whenever we discussed anything practical. Mortgage, upcoming trip, tax filings. They had opinions on all of it. Our routine went from simple to crowded. We used to have clear roles. I handled investments and long-term planning. She ran the calendar and kept family logistics moving. It wasn't rigid. It just worked. After the retreat invitations started, the calendar became a list of her events. The logistics turned into reminders for me. If I asked for a quiet dinner or a weekend with no guests, I was told I was limiting her growth. A month before today, she brought up the idea of living separately to think. I asked if there was someone else. She said I was being paranoid and that the question proved her point. The topic ended there, but the air in the house had changed. I'm not in the business of drama. I work in numbers. Numbers don't yell. They show a pattern and sit there until you acknowledge it. So I observed. I kept our routines intact, kept the house clean, kept paying bills on the first of the month. I stopped initiating arguments. I started saving what mattered. We had a prenuptial agreement we both signed before the wedding, drafted by her attorney and reviewed by mine. It was straightforward. We talked about it openly back then because it protected both of us. I made a copy the week she changed her phone password and put it in my desk drawer behind the tax returns. I also saved records. Every voicemail, every text that touched money, assets, or separation. I exported her messages to me into a simple folder with dates and the file name. When calls happened on speaker in the car and she made statements about trying options, I wrote the times down and pulled the phone logs later. When a friend encouraged her in our kitchen and didn't know the doorbell camera captures audio at the threshold, I saved the clip. Nothing secret or illegal. Just ordinary records created by ordinary devices that people forget are part of daily life. When the car left the driveway today, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and put water on for tea. The dog watched the door and then lay down. I checked the bank app. No unusual transfers. I checked shared calendars. Her next 2 weeks were full of lunches and events with the same 3 people who had been coaching this. I didn't call her. There was nothing urgent to discuss, and I wasn't going to start a text thread for an audience to read. I picked up the tote she'd tossed near the entry. Workshop workbook, a receipt for a bracelet, a printed sheet about steps to reclaim your identity. I put everything back and set the bag by the bench. In the laundry room, I found a stack of clothes from the past few days, still warm from the dryer. I folded them and placed them on the chair in our bedroom. The bed was made, the blinds half open, and the afternoon light fell evenly across the floor. It looked like any other day. It wasn't. Back at my desk, I opened the safe and confirmed what I already knew was there. Prenup copy, marriage certificate, home deed, insurance policies, the external drive with the documentation folders. I plugged the drive in long enough to make sure the most recent exports were complete, then unplugged it and returned it to the safe. I wrote the date on a sticky note and attached it to the prenup copy. If I needed to refer to anything later, I wouldn't be guessing. I changed my email recovery contacts and updated cloud backups. I added my brother as the second emergency contact in my medical file. I checked the spare keys in the kitchen bowl. One key was hers. I left it. There was no benefit in rushing her out or changing locks today. Everything could move at a normal pace. Clear steps. By early evening, the house had settled into a steady quiet. I cooked eggs and toast and ate at the counter. Her place at the table stayed set from breakfast. I left it alone. I took a short walk around the block and returned to 2 unread texts from a colleague and a promotional email. Nothing from her. I sent one message. I'm home. Your things are where you left them. If you need a time to pick up additional items, let me know. It was courteous, plain, and complete. I closed the laptop and sat with the day. A marriage can fail fast in public or slow in private. Ours had been failing in small steps for months. Today was simply the first time it showed on the surface in a way no one could ignore. The sentence she delivered in the living room ended one version of our life. What comes next will be documented, dated, and handled step by step. I'm steady. I know what I have, what I've kept, and what I'm willing to accept. The rest can proceed in order. She returned the next afternoon with 2 friends trailing her. They walked past me without a greeting and set their bags on the kitchen island like they lived there. One opened the fridge and asked her what she wanted to drink. The other held up a phone and told her to say something for the girls. She said she felt clear and done living small. I stayed in the living room and finished an email to a client. When I stood to refill my water, I nodded to each of them and kept moving. It wasn't rudeness. It was a boundary. That evening, a stream of posts appeared on her accounts. Photos of a patio table, a caption about day 1 of a new start, and comments from the same circle that had been around our house all week. A mutual friend forwarded one to me with a question mark. I replied with a single sentence. We're working through changes. I took screenshots and filed them by date, because I wanted a record of what was being said and when it was said. The calls moved to speaker. I heard my name more in 1 week than I had in the past 3 months. He's so measured, one voice said. He'll fold if you push. Another said I had kept her in a boring routine. She repeated these lines later as if they were her own observations. My work was narrow. My plans were control. When I asked, "What do you want from me right now?" she said, "I want you to accept that I'm not your wife in the way you expect." I asked, "What does that mean in practice?" She said, "It means I'm free to build my own life." That was the longest exchange we had all week. On Wednesday, she asked me to move the dresser out of our bedroom because it felt masculine. 2 friends arrived with her and stood in the doorway while she pointed at items she wanted gone. I said I'd arrange a pickup and asked for a written list. She rolled her eyes, but she wrote it. I stored the list with the other documents. That night, I heard her telling someone I was cooperative when monitored. I made tea and read a client memo until midnight. On Thursday, she suggested we should trial separate for clarity. I asked if she had a location in mind. She said she might stay with a friend who understands her. I asked for dates and a plan for the dog. She said she would let me know. Then she changed the Wi-Fi name to a phrase about rebirth and posted a photo of the network screen. I changed my own devices to a personal hotspot and left hers alone. Later, a notification showed a failed attempt to access one of my cloud accounts. I recorded the time and moved on. The next 2 days were about presentation. She came and went with new outfits and a tote of printed workbooks. Her friends recorded short videos near the front steps and made comments about finally breathing. When she spoke to me, it was in short directives. Leave the garage open at 6. Don't wait up. I'll be out late. I kept my answers brief and precise. Garage will be open. I won't wait up. Understood. Friday night brought the first open accusation. She stood by the kitchen sink and told me my calm was a tactic. She said I was withholding affection to punish her. I answered plainly. You said you didn't want a traditional marriage. I'm giving you space and clarity. She said, you're trying to make me look like the villain. I said, I'm not speaking to anyone about this. She left the room and resumed a call on the back patio. A minute later, I heard my name again. I put in earbuds and finished reconciling a portfolio. Saturday, she posted a photo at a rooftop bar with a caption about freedom. A mutual friend texted me, asking if we were splitting. I replied, we're discussing next steps. She came home late, walked past me, and asked if I had thought about moving out. I told her I wouldn't abandon the house or the dog. I added that if she wanted to formalize separation, we could handle it through counsel. She blinked, looked at the floor, and said, you always make this legal. I said, legal is how adults end contracts and protect assets. It keeps emotions from running decisions. She didn't respond. Sunday morning, her mother called me. She said her daughter needed room to grow and asked me not to sabotage opportunities. By late Sunday, the dynamic had a pattern. Public confidence when her friends were around. Private agitation when I refused to engage beyond logistics. She dropped statements and washed my face for a crack. I asked concrete questions and kept records of answers. She changed the tone when I brought up practical steps, timelines, property, accounts, and who would file first. She was ready for scenes. She wasn't ready for process. On Monday morning, she arrived with 2 suitcases and said she might stay elsewhere for the week. I asked if she had a key to that place. She said yes. I asked for an address for emergencies. She said she would text it. I asked for dates for pickup of the remaining items on her list. She said she would coordinate. Her friends waited in the car, engine running. She stood in the doorway looking at the living room. You're not going to try to stop me? I said, you made your decision last week. I heard you. After she left, I walked through the rooms and took photos. Not sentimental photos. Inventory photos. I saved them in a folder labeled with the date and room names. I checked the bank accounts again. No unusual transfers. I checked the credit card portal. One attempt at a large purchase at a boutique had been declined because I had reduced limits on discretionary categories a month earlier. I left the limit as is. I sent her a short message. Let me know if you need a time to collect the rest of the items on your list. I'll be home after 6. That night, a final push came through a group message I hadn't known existed. A mutual acquaintance added me to a thread where my wife had been presenting a story about being trapped. I read without replying. The details didn't match the last year of our household logs, calendars, or bank statements. I took screenshots and left the thread. 2 minutes later, she texted me, asking why I had spied on her circle. I told her I had been added by someone else and had already left. She told me to show some grace. I responded, we can show each other grace by telling the truth. The week closed with a quiet dinner at the counter. I cooked, cleaned, and filed the receipts. The house was still. The desk drawer still held the prenup copy. The safe still held the drive. The calendars were current. The dog slept by the door. I sent one final message before bed. If you intend to file, let me know. If not, I'll start the process on Friday. There was no reply. I turned off the light and slept without setting an alarm. The pressure had peaked. I had asked my questions. I hadn't raised my voice. I had stated what comes next. I set the next steps in motion on Monday. At 9 a.m., I met my attorney in a conference room with neutral walls and a clock that kept good time. I laid out a binder, prenup copy, inventory photos from every room, screenshots of public posts, the group thread I was added to and exited, call logs, doorbell audio timestamps, and a list of dates when she and her friends entered the house. I explained the past week without adjectives. He read the prenup first, then the fidelity clause. He asked 2 questions, both about verification. I answered with file names and locations. We signed a retainer. We built an index. Exhibit A, prenuptial agreement, signed and notarized. Exhibit B, statements showing my premarital accounts and current balances. Exhibit C, titles for the house, car, and business interests. Exhibit D, public posts and captions that contradict the claim that she was trapped or controlled. Exhibit E, audio from the entry camera on the day she declared her new start, with her friends cheering and instructing. Exhibit F, messages where she described testing options. Exhibit G, the list she wrote for items she wanted removed and the photos of those items. Each file received a label and a checksum. Nothing sloppy. No gaps. My attorney drafted 2 letters. The first was a preservation notice instructing her and anyone advising her to keep all messages, media, and location history. The second summarized the prenup terms. My premarital assets remain separate. My company remains separate. The home equity follows the schedule in the agreement. Personal property goes to the person using it. Spousal support is waived in cases of infidelity and otherwise capped at 12 months. He attached a settlement outline that matched the prenup. She keeps her car and personal effects. We follow the division schedule for any joint savings. I assume the mortgage. Each party covers their own legal fees. No threats. Only the document we both signed before marriage, referenced by section and page. Before we sent anything, I made practical adjustments. I moved my paycheck to a single-owner account. I reviewed autopays and left all essentials funded so the house would not fall behind. I reduced discretionary limits on the joint card to 0 and removed reward transfers to any shared wallet. I set alerts for transactions over $50. I created a written budget for the next 3 months with a column showing household obligations I would continue to cover and a column showing items that would stop immediately. I kept the list for court and for my own clarity. Then I wrote to her directly. The email fit on one screen. I confirmed that future communication would be in writing. I proposed 2 pickup windows for the remaining items on her list and asked her to select one. I set a rule: no visitors inside during pickups, no filming in the house, and all exchanges limited to the items on the list. I proposed a temporary schedule for the dog. I ended with one sentence: my counsel will send you a preservation notice and a proposal consistent with the prenup. Her reply arrived 6 minutes later. She accused me of intimidation and said I was weaponizing paperwork. She stated she would be seeking half of everything and fair support for the years she invested. I sent 2 words: refer counsel. She called twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. She texted a 3rd time asking if I had ever loved her. I did not answer. 2 hours later, her attorney emailed my lawyer a demand letter claiming I coerced her into the prenup and that my calm behavior proved manipulation. My attorney replied with the signed prenup, the 5-day review period she used back then, her counsel's signature from that time, and the text history from the week of signing where she confirmed she was satisfied with the terms. We added the clause that voids support in cases of infidelity and the exhibits that show her describing other partners as tests. We sent the settlement outline again, unchanged. That night, she showed up at the house with a friend waiting in the car. She asked to talk like adults. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I kept my hands at my sides and spoke evenly. All legal matters go through counsel. Your items are boxed by room. Choose a pickup time from the email. She asked if I was recording. I pointed to the doorbell and said, the device records as usual. She asked if I was really going to leave her with nothing. I answered, you will receive what the prenup provides. Nothing less, nothing more. She turned away and told her friend I was heartless. I said, I will not discuss feelings on the porch. She left. The next morning, my attorney notified me that her counsel had requested an emergency hearing for exclusive use of the residence and interim support. We responded with bank records, the budget showing I continued to pay household obligations, the absence of any threat or harassment, and the preservation letter she ignored by deleting several posts after the first demand went out. We attached the clips of her friends entering unannounced, filming in the entry, and speaking about logging reactions. We asked for the opposite: exclusive use to me, a no dissipation order on all accounts, and an order that all pickups follow the written schedule. By midweek, pressure built on her side. 2 of her friends received preservation letters at their work emails because that is where they coordinated. One of them wrote to me demanding I stop involving them. I forwarded it to my attorney without a comment. My lawyer called me after court. The judge declined her emergency support request pending a review of the prenup and told both sides to maintain status quo. The judge granted my request for scheduled pickups and wrote that filming inside the house without consent was not allowed. We received temporary exclusive use of the residence with the dog remaining with me under the proposed schedule. With orders in place, I completed the rest of my plan. I opened AP.O. box and rerouted statements. I placed fraud alerts on my credit profiles. I updated beneficiaries and emergency contacts. I informed HR that any spousal benefit changes should wait for final orders. I set a daily hour to respond to counsel and refused to let the case bleed into my workday. My clients received their reports on time. The house stayed clean. The ledger stayed accurate. Her response shifted from public claims to negotiations. Her attorney floated a new idea, a lump sum payment, to close the chapter. We declined and restated the prenup. He suggested mediation. We agreed, but with conditions: neutral mediator, full disclosure of any accounts created this year, and all social posts preserved. She texted me that night asking whether we could reset privately and skip court. I replied, "We will resolve this through the agreement we both signed." No extra words. On the first pickup date, she arrived on schedule and alone. I had boxed her clothes by closet, labeled by shelf, and gathered chargers and accessories in clear bags. I kept the garage open and waited inside. She walked directly to the boxes and loaded them calmly. Before she left, she asked if there was any chance we could stop. I said, "You told me you would not be a wife. I heard you. I am acting accordingly." She nodded once and drove away. I noted the time and sent my attorney a short update. Pickup complete without incident. 2 days later, her counsel withdrew the demand for support and asked only for the property division in the prenup and a mutual non-disparagement clause. We accepted the clause and asked for a reciprocal commitment to keep third parties out of the house and off the property during any future exchanges. We added a mutual block on posting about the case. He agreed. By the end of the month, the case looked like the document we had signed years ago. Because I refused to have one, I kept records, followed process, and limited contact to matters that required decisions. I did not announce anything online. I let the order, the exhibits, and the prenup do the speaking. The result was simple. The agreement held, the house remained stable, the accounts stayed intact, and the path to final orders was clear. I'm done playing. I don't chase statements or manage other people's approval. I set terms, honored what I signed, and protected what I built. When she chose a different life, I accepted her choice and moved the matter from feelings to paperwork. That is not cruelty. That is adulthood. 2 days after the hearing, she posted a vague caption about surviving control. It named no one, but it implied I had isolated her. My attorney sent a notice referencing the non-disparagement clause. The post disappeared within an hour. A day later, the judge's clerk scheduled a brief status call. The judge reminded both sides that orders apply to innuendo as well as names. No sanction, but a warning went on the record. Her friends noticed the deletion. The comments stopped. Preservation letters reached 2 of those friends at their work emails. One replied with anger. Another replied with a short line saying she would not be involved. Within a week, the same group that had stood in my kitchen no longer wanted their names in any thread. Invitations to their meetups vanished from my wife's feed. The public chorus that cheered her first exit fell quiet when documents entered the picture. At the next pickup, she arrived in a new dress and stood close to me in the garage, talking softly about how we used to be. She placed a hand on my arm and said we could reset everything if I paused the case. I stepped back half a pace and kept my voice even. "We will follow the documents we both signed." She glanced at the doorbell camera by the entry and said she felt humiliated by the process. I said process protects both sides. She loaded the remaining boxes without a word. The following week, her attorney sent a revised proposal asking for a one-time payment. We declined and sent back the same terms tied to the prenup. That same day, I received an email from HR at my firm asking if I needed schedule accommodations. I declined. My work remained on time. The stability of my calendar made the pressure shift even more visible on her side. A mutual friend sent me screenshots from a closed group where she had been collecting sympathy. He added one message of his own. "I didn't know about the prenup. I understand now." I saved the screenshots and closed the thread. A day later, she wrote to me that sharing screenshots was spying. I replied that third parties sent them without request and that I would preserve anything related to the case. She stopped texting for 2 days. Finances tightened for her. I saw attempts on the joint card for hotel charges decline automatically because the discretionary category remained zeroed out. She emailed asking me to approve one night for safety. I told her to send counsel a schedule request if she needed temporary access to the house outside the pickup windows. She did not send one. Instead, She slept on a friend's couch for a week, then moved to a small sublet. Her attorney asked again for interim support. My attorney replied with the clause in the prenup and the order from the judge about status quo. The request was withdrawn before the next call. The person she had been hinting at during her calls never appeared at any pickup. One evening, I heard her on the porch leaving a message that sounded like a request to meet. The next day, she asked if the dog could stay with her for an extra night. I agreed and told her to send the handoff time in writing. She returned the dog on time. Her eyes were tired. She asked if I hated her. I said hatred had nothing to do with this. Then I went back inside. The non-disparagement clause started to work in quiet ways. A neighbor who had seen her friends filming told her that our block didn't want crowds in the entryways. He told me the same thing in separate words. Now the only movement on the porch was scheduled. The doorbell recordings reflected that. The house kept the same pace every day: work, walk the dog, prepare dinner, respond to counsel for an hour, close the laptop. Her attorney proposed mediation to humanize the issues. We agreed, but insisted on the same terms and full preservation. At the session, the mediator began with a review of the prenup and asked if either party disputed its validity. Her attorney said no. The discussion turned into logistics, final property exchanges, removal dates, tax filings, and a draft of a mutual release. When the mediator asked if we wanted to add a reconciliation clause, I said no. Her attorney did not raise it again. Outside the mediation room, she approached me while her attorney took a call. She said she had believed I would chase her once she packed a suitcase. I said I believed her when she said she wouldn't be a wife. She asked if I had ever wavered during the past month. I said no. She nodded, stepped back, and returned to her chair. The mediator returned with a draft that mirrored our original agreement. The last visible attempt at leverage came through her social accounts. She posted a photo of a packed box and wrote about reclaiming space after years of routine. No names. Still a violation. We sent another notice. She deleted the caption and replaced it with a neutral line about moving. A week later, she closed the account. My attorney filed the final stipulation. We set a date for the judge to enter the order. Her attorney asked for an extra week to finalize her address for notices. I agreed. In that week, she sent a last text. I thought it would feel different. I did not answer. Silence was not punishment. It was the result of decisions made in order and in writing. People who had repeated her early claims started to contact me with small apologies. I said the matter was resolved through the agreement and wished them well. A neighbor who had worried about drama told me the street felt normal again. My calendar reflected the same thing. Work blocks, attorney calls, dog care, sleep. No detours. The final order arrived by email on a Tuesday at 10:14 a.m. The subject line contained the case number and the word entered. I opened the attachment and read each page. The prenup was affirmed. Premarital assets remained separate. The house stayed with me. Each party kept personal property and accounts in their own names. No support. Mutual non-disparagement. Each side paid their own fees. Pickup windows remained as scheduled, with filming barred inside. The dog schedule I proposed during mediation was adopted as written. I forwarded the PDF to my attorney with a single line, received and understood. He replied, "Congratulations on closure." She texted 30 minutes later asking if we could talk, one last time without lawyers. I forwarded the message to counsel and closed my phone. At noon, I completed the last set of account changes the order allowed, closed the joint credit line, removed her as an authorized user anywhere her name still appeared, and confirmed that all autopays pulled from single-owner accounts. I uploaded the final inventory photos and moved the folder to an archive drive. I placed her house key in a sealed envelope and sent it through her attorney. 2 days later, she completed the last pickup. She arrived alone and on time. The garage door was open with labeled boxes staged by wall. I stayed inside and waited for the sound of the trunk closing. She paused at the door into the house and looked at the entry camera. "Goodbye," she said to no one in particular. I did not move. When the car pulled away, I walked into the garage, checked the empty space, and shut the door. I emailed my attorney. All personal property transfers complete. He sent a receipt for the record. I changed the locks once the order allowed it. I updated the alarm codes and disabled old device profiles. I updated beneficiaries and emergency contacts. My brother moved to the top of the list. I added a second local contact for the dog in case of travel. I created a short document with instructions for the house in the event of an emergency and left a copy in the safe. It listed contacts, account numbers, and the location of key files. Nothing dramatic, just straightforward organization. I sent one message to a small group of mutual friends. The matter is resolved. Please respect privacy. I won't be discussing details. Most replied with a short acknowledgement. A few sent apologies for the assumptions they had made in the first week. I told them there was nothing to debate and wished them well. I did not read any more group threads. I muted and archived anything that looked like commentary. My social accounts remained private and quiet. Work stayed steady. I kept my reports on schedule and held client calls at the same times. My calendar looked like any other quarter, regular blocks, deadlines, reviews. I added a morning routine that had nothing to do with the case. 3 miles on the greenway near the house and a simple breakfast at the counter. The dog adapted quickly to the new pace. Handoffs were uneventful. Times were honored. Messages stayed on logistics. I made small changes inside the house. I returned the bedroom to a simple layout, moved a desk into the spare room, donated the extra dresser she had wanted gone, and stored the remaining boxes for shredding day. I kept the kitchen organized and the office clear. She sent 2 more messages after the order. The first asked if we could meet for coffee without her attorney. I did not answer. The second said she regretted how public the first week had been. I archived it. It was the new standard. A month passed. The non-disparagement clause did its work. There were no more captions about freedom or control. Her account went quiet and then private. The friends who once filmed at my door stopped appearing in the neighborhood. I did not ask mutual friends for news. I checked my accounts, paid the mortgage, and filed my reports. I scheduled a meeting with my estate attorney and updated documents I had ignored for too long. Will, healthcare directive, powers of attorney. All signed and witnessed. I added a section about the dog in case of injury or death, with funds set aside for care. I left a note in the safe indicating where the copies were stored. I set calendar reminders for annual reviews. The mediator sent a closing letter with a short evaluation request. I declined to complete it. There was nothing to add. The process did what it was supposed to do, reduce conflict to documents and dates. The clerk filed the final notices. My attorney closed the file and invited me to reach out if anything changed. Nothing did. On a Sunday afternoon, I drove past the complex where she had rented an apartment. I had no interest in stopping. I was on my way to the hardware store for a list of ordinary items. On the drive home, I realized the last message from her had arrived almost 4 weeks earlier. No new attempts. I kept the house running, kept the work calendar, and kept the dog schedule. I booked a short trip to visit my brother and used the P.O. box for temporary holds. I checked the entry camera when I returned. 1 package, delivered on time. Nothing else. If anyone asked what I learned, the answer was simple. Do not debate a declaration. Believe it and act accordingly. Keep records. Protect assets. Speak through documents when necessary and through silence when nothing is required. Most of all, do not remain in any arrangement where respect has been removed and replaced with performance. One evening, a mutual friend texted that she had moved to a different complex across town. He added that she seemed focused on work. I typed, wishing her the best, and sent it. Then I put the phone down and took the dog for a walk. The route was the same as it had been before everything started. Past the corner, down to the small park, back along the sidewalk. We returned to a clean kitchen and a quiet office. I set coffee for the morning, turned off the lights, and went to bed at a normal hour. There is paperwork closed, keys returned, and a life that now fits the space it occupies. I am not waiting for a message. I am not planning a response. The boundary stands. I am steady in that.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.